Good morning, everybody. I am here with Kyla. Before we get started, I'd like to start with you. What do you think are the 3 top issues right now that you're seeing in associations?
Well, it's February, so lots of annual meetings coming up, lots of elections coming up. I'm getting a lot of questions from condominium associations that don't have an e-voting platform about how they're going to implement email voting. So there's a difference between e-voting and email voting. So I get that all the time for my HOAs, and I think we're going to talk about it in this segment, the Marketable Record Title Act.
MRTA?
What is that? MRTA, 30 years. What does that mean? So I'm getting that a lot, and then the proper way to fine in my HOAs. So lots of changes from the last couple of years, and I think it's really starting to hit the community associations that were affected.
All right. Well, so you hit some of my things I wanted to talk about. So let's talk about MRTA first.
Okay.
We're going to talk a lot in this segment about stuff that impacts HOAs. This is going to be a very HOA heavy segment. And MRTA is very much an HOA only topic. As far as I know, it can't impact condos, right?
That's correct.
All right. So would you like to explain your understanding of MRTA? Because it's probably better than mine. My understanding of MRTA is kind of funky.
This will not be a very legal understanding and a very legal conversation, but this is how I explain it to my boards of directors. It doesn't affect condominium associations because if you look at the condominium deed, there is a specific reference to the declaration of condominium. Unit 202 of this condominium as described in the declaration of condominium, recorded in the public records, blah, blah, blah. And that is very different if you're in an HOA and you take a look at your deed. Your deed does not reference any documents. It maybe will say subject to restrictions, but it does not specifically say subject to the declaration of covenants as recorded here and there in the public records of whatever county you're in. And that is what makes the biggest difference, because the Marketable Record Title Act says whatever restrictions you have on your property, you must preserve it every 30 years for it to keep being in effect. And because there's no notice to anyone who owns this property, specifically on your deed that you see on a daily basis, that talks about the declaration or any of those specific restrictions, that's why Marketable Record Title Act says, well, you can't notice it to the world, so every 30 years, you have to tell the world that it's there. Okay. That's how I explain it to my board members. I'm sure there's a very legal way of explaining it, but most of my board members, their eyes gloss over and they don't want to hear that. We talk about, easy ways to explain it.
And so I'm assuming the reason MRTA was passed was because otherwise when anyone did a title search, they would be doing it eternally.
Yes.
Now they only have to do, when they do a title search, only really have to go back 30 years.
Yes.
Which makes it able to be done. Otherwise it'd be a little more difficult. Now, from MRTA, it doesn't just impact HOAs, it actually impacts a lot of other things that would impact title.
Correct.
But for
anything that would impact property. But for our purposes, it's really for homeowners associations.
Okay. So the good news is that the legislature did create a kind of streamlined way to preserve for HOAs at least.
Yes.
So what is that process?
It's very easy. And it's just the fact that we need to keep track of your 30th birthday as an HOA. And if we do that properly, we can at least 2-3 years prior to the 30th birthday, we can preserve these documents by a 48-hour notice board meeting. It's very easy, just like any other type of board meeting. We just have to put it in the notice that you're preserving your governing documents. It's a vote by the board. And then after you're done, then we would record a notice of preservation in the public records. And you're done for another 30 years.
Fantastic. So at Newell, we have a system that's built into VMS that tracks that. So we track the MRTA date and we reach out, just do that. Now, what has happened in a few instances recently is we've taken over associations that have expired.
Yes.
And that process, while not impossible, is a little more in-depth.
It is more cumbersome.
So can you walk us through what that process is like?
I'm actually working with a couple associations right now. You would have to obtain the approval of a majority of the entire membership to revitalize your governing documents. So it's basically your governing documents are asleep and you have to wake them back up. And so it requires a members meeting, and we would have to set that up, make sure that there's quorum, make sure you have the approval of at least a majority of the entire membership. Doesn't matter what your quorum requirement is, it's just of a majority of everyone. And we have to make sure all the documents are ready. And these documents are very specific because once we get the vote, then within a set timeline, we have to send it to Florida Commerce, which is an agency in the state of Florida that reviews all of this stuff. And then once they approve it, then we record it in the governing document, in the public records, that your documents are now revitalized. And this process usually takes about 6 months, because prior to even getting to the membership vote, we need to make sure all of our documents are together to send it out to the members. So it's not an easy process, but it is very doable if we have the membership support.
So let's say that our documents, so what do we call it when our documents are extinguished or when they don't work?
They're extinguished.
Okay. Oh, okay. Sorry. I was trying to prompt you to that.
Yeah,
so when the documents no longer are valid, when MRTA, basically we've gone past that 30-year mark, the documents are extinguished. Mm-hmm. And at that point, so the impact of the association is, does the association exist?
The corporation exists.
Okay,
because our corporation is under the Florida Division of Corporation. So the corporation exists. It's a question of whether the corporation can enforce the documents. Okay. And if you look at the documents, that's the declaration itself talks about the assessments, the assessing power of the association, the use rights of all of the owners, and the prohibitions against some uses in the association. So it affects your right to require people to pay to maintain your common areas. And for some, these common areas are not small. They have recreational facilities, they have roads that they're responsible for, South Florida water management areas, preserve areas. And so there's a very big question mark on whether I, as an owner, have to pay the association the assessments to maintain these areas. And then also, if I'm not allowed to maybe park on the street overnight or do a couple other things, or maybe paint my house a crazy color of orange, there's a big question mark as to whether the association can pursue me for enforcement if I do those things when these documents are extinguished.
So where I was going with this also is there's a difference between extinguished documents and dissolution. Mm-hmm. So some people believe that if they simply don't refile every 30 years, that they're dissolving the association, but they're not.
Right.
So the association still is going to own its property, right? The owners still have that common property. It's very different than a disillusionment of an association.
Yes.
When the documents are extinguished, though, it's a strange purgatory where you lose the ability. Well, if people, as long as everyone voluntarily follows everything, you're okay. Mm-hmm. It's just if you try to enforce collection of funds, like somebody stopped paying you your quarterly fee, try to enforce that, it becomes a problem. Or if somebody paints the house a different color and try to enforce that, it becomes a problem. Right?
Yes, that's absolutely right.
All right, so that is MRTA. From our side, most of the time, all we do is a 48-hour regular board meeting, notice it, we give it to Kyla. Kyla files it, whatever she does with it, and it's kind of done.